Message read. No reply. Your stomach drops. It's not rational, it's immediate. Your body goes on alert. Your mind starts scanning for mistakes. What did I do? What did I say? Nothing happened, but something old just activated. You're old enough to know this is small, and yet it feels enormous. Because the one reacting isn't your current age. It's the age you were the first time you felt alone. And that version of you is still trying to make sure no one leaves again. Stay if that reaction isn't new. You look like an adult, you pay your bills, you meet deadlines, you hold conversations that sound rational, you use words like boundaries, responsibility, maturity. From the outside, nothing seems unstable. But then someone criticizes you, not brutally, not cruelly, just enough. And something inside you collapses. Your chest tightens, your throat closes, your mind rushes to defend. You either over-explain, or shut down completely, or turn cold. Later you tell yourself it was a normal reaction, but it wasn't proportional. It was older, that's the fracture, you are grown. But something inside you is still waiting to be protected. You see it when someone pulls away. A delayed message, a shift in tone, a subtle emotional distance. Your body reacts before your reasoning does. You feel panic, you feel urgency, you feel the need to fix it immediately. You say it's love. You say you care deeply. But sometimes it isn't love. It's fear. Fear that feels too big for the moment. You promise yourself you won't overreact again. You promise you won't chase. You promise you won't collapse into guilt. And then it happens again. Because the one reacting isn't the adult version of you. It's the child who never felt safe. The child who learned early that connection could disappear. The child who adapted quickly. Be good, be quiet, be impressive, don't be too much, don't need too much, you grew up. But those instructions never did. They became reflexes. You think you are making conscious choices, but many of your emotional reactions are automatic. You believe you are responding to your partner. But your nervous system is responding to an earlier absence. You believe you are defending yourself. But sometimes you are defending a wound. You say you are independent, but you are terrified of being left. You say you are strong, but you are afraid of being exposed. You say you don't need validation, but your mood shifts depending on who approves of you. This is not immaturity, it is injury. There is a difference. Immaturity refuses responsibility. Injury hides inside responsibility. You learned how to function. You learned how to survive. You learned how to appear composed. But the child who felt unseen, unheard, unprotected, was never integrated. So when something resembles the original fear, that child reacts. Fast, intense, unfiltered. And the adult version of you arrives late, trying to manage the aftermath. You say, "Why am I like this?" But that question assumes the reaction belongs to your present self. It doesn't. It belongs to a version of you that never finished developing in safety. You are not failing at adulthood. You are carrying a part of yourself that was left alone too early, and it is still trying to get its needs met. Not gently, not consciously, but urgently. That urgency is what sabotages you, not because you are weak, because you are split. And when you are split, the strongest emotion wins, not the wisest one. You can look composed in a meeting, you can negotiate contracts, you can give advice to friends, and still crumble internally when someone important withdraws affection. That contradiction is not hypocrisy, it is fragmentation. The adult handles structure, the child handles attachment, and when attachment feels threatened, the child takes control. You don't become irrational, you become young, and you call that personality. But it isn't. It is unfinished protection, and until you see that clearly, the adult will keep performing, and the child will keep deciding. The child was not allowed to be a child. That's where this begins. Somewhere early, something was required from you that should not have been required. Be strong. Don't cry. Don't make it harder. Be mature for your age. Take care of yourself. Take care of others. Maybe no one said it directly. Maybe it was silent. A distracted parent. An unpredictable home. Emotional absence. Criticism disguised as discipline. Affection that had conditions. You adapted. Children always do. Because survival depends on adaptation. If love feels unstable, you become hyper-attuned. If attention feels scarce, you become impressive. If emotions feel overwhelming to others, you become contained. If chaos surrounds you, you become controlled. That adaptation worked. It kept connection intact. It reduced conflict. It minimized rejection, but it had a cost. The parts of you that needed comfort were postponed. The parts that needed reassurance were silenced. The parts that needed protection learned to protect themselves. That is not strength. It is early responsibility. And early responsibility creates early armor. Armor looks impressive from the outside. Composed, self-sufficient, capable. But armor is built around vulnerability. It is not the absence of need. It is the concealment of need. You became the adult before you were ready. Emotionally. You learned to regulate yourself because no one consistently regulated you. You learned not to depend because dependence felt risky. You learned not to express because expression felt unsafe. And slowly, the child who needed care stopped asking. Not because the need disappeared, because asking felt dangerous. So the need went underground. It did not dissolve. It compressed. And what compresses under pressure becomes charged. This is where Jung's idea of the complex begins to make sense. When a cluster of emotion is too painful or too unacceptable, it splits off from conscious identity. It does not vanish. It becomes autonomous. The wounded child does not grow with you. It remains at the age it was when the injury occurred. Frozen, alert, waiting. The adult self builds competence. The child self builds vigilance. The adult self develops language. The child self develops fear. And when something in the present resembles the original instability, the frozen part activates, not gradually, instantly. You are not reacting as a 30-year-old, or 40-year-old, or 50-year-old. You are reacting as the child who once learned that connection could disappear without warning. This is why the reaction feels so absolute. Children feel in absolutes. If someone withdraws, it means abandonment. If someone criticizes, it means rejection. If someone is upset, it means danger. Those interpretations were once adaptive, but now they operate inside an adult nervous system. You think you are dramatic. You think you are too sensitive. You think you are just emotional. But what you are is unfinished. The child was silenced, not integrated. Silencing is not healing. It is suppression. And suppression does not eliminate emotion. It delays it. The adult you built is competent, but the child underneath is still scanning for safety, still negotiating worth, still asking silently, am I enough? Am I too much? Will they leave? Do I matter? Those questions do not disappear because you grew older. They disappear only when they are consciously held. But you didn't hold them. You outran them. You became productive. You became independent. You became impressive. And everyone praised that version of you. But praise does not replace integration. You can be successful and still emotionally 5 years old in certain triggers. You can be respected and still collapse when someone withdraws affection. You can give advice and still panic when you feel unseen. That contradiction is not hypocrisy. It is a split. The adult is real, the child is also real, but they are not connected. And when they are not connected, whoever feels most threatened takes control. Usually, that's the child. As you grew older, the adult self became more sophisticated. You learned vocabulary for emotions. You learned about boundaries. You learned about self-worth. You learned how to articulate what you need. But articulation is not the same as integration. You can say, I deserve respect, and still feel shattered when someone disapproves. You can say, I know my value, and still spiral when someone important withdraws. Because knowledge lives in the adult mind, fear lives in the child body, and the body reacts first. This is where Jung's understanding of complexes becomes precise. He described complexes as psychic fragments that behave like splinter personalities. They are not metaphors. They function as partial selves. They have their own emotional charge, their own logic, their own memory. When activated, they narrow your perception. You stop seeing the present clearly. You see through the lens of the original injury. Someone forgets to text back. The adult mind says they're busy. The child says, you're about to be abandoned. Someone sets a boundary with you. The adult mind says, "That's healthy." The child says, "You're not wanted." Someone criticizes your behavior. The adult mind says, "I can reflect on this." The child says, "You are fundamentally wrong." And when the child speaks that loudly, the adult doesn't disappear. It rationalizes, it builds arguments, it defends. But the emotional tone has already been decided. You think you're choosing your response, but the child has already chosen the emotional atmosphere. That is why you over-apologize, why you chase when someone pulls away, why you tolerate disrespect longer than you should, why you struggle to say no without guilt. Saying no feels like risking connection. Connection once meant safety, so you comply, even when it costs you. You call it kindness. But sometimes it is fear. Fear that if you assert yourself, you will lose love. That fear did not begin in your current relationship. It began when love felt conditional. The child learned, stay agreeable, stay useful, stay pleasing, because displeasing felt dangerous. Now, as an adult, you may intellectually reject that belief, but under pressure, the old rule reactivates. You become accommodating again, you shrink, you soften your boundaries, and afterward you feel resentment. You think, why did I do that? Because the child still believes safety depends on approval. Approval becomes addictive. Not because you are insecure, because you were once unsafe. Validation feels like regulation. When someone affirms you, your nervous system relaxes. When someone withdraws, it destabilizes. You are not weak for feeling this, but you are divided. The adult wants autonomy, the child wants reassurance, and when reassurance feels threatened, autonomy collapses. This is how sabotage happens. Not through dramatic self-destruction, through subtle self-betrayal. You abandon your needs to preserve connection. You silence your voice to avoid conflict. You overextend to maintain affection. And each time you do, the child feels temporarily safe, but the adult feels smaller. Over time, this creates internal resentment. You feel exhausted in relationships. You feel unseen. You feel like you are doing more than the other person. And yet, when you consider pulling back, fear floods in, because pulling back feels like risking abandonment. You are not immature. You are operating from a younger emotional script. And until that script is brought into awareness, it will keep running. Quietly, automatically, with conviction. The sabotage is not dramatic, it is subtle. You don't explode your life, you negotiate yourself down. You say yes when you mean no. You soften your tone when you are angry, you laugh when something hurt, you accept less than you want because asking feels dangerous. From the outside, you look cooperative, reasonable, flexible. But inside, something feels off. You feel smaller than you are. You feel tired in ways you can't explain. You feel resentment toward people who never explicitly harmed you. That resentment has a source. Every time you betray your adult needs to protect the child's fear, you split again. The adult self knows what is fair, respectful, and aligned. But the child fears the cost of enforcing it. The cost feels enormous. Because in the child's memory, enforcing yourself meant losing love. So you hesitate, you negotiate, you dilute your boundary, and you call it compromise. But it isn't always compromise. Sometimes it is regression. Jung observed that when a complex is activated, it temporarily possesses the ego. Possession does not mean insanity. It means narrowing. Your field of awareness shrinks. You do not see the full picture. You see the threat. And the threat is rarely what is happening now. It is what once happened. You think you are afraid of this person leaving, but you are afraid of that earlier loss. You think you are anxious about this argument, but you are anxious about that earlier chaos. The child inside you is still negotiating for safety, in a world that no longer exists. And because that world is gone, the strategies no longer fit. Yet you repeat them. You overfunction, you anticipate needs before they are expressed. You monitor moods. You try to prevent tension before it arises. You are hyper-responsible in relationships. Not because you love deeply, because you learned that love required management. That management once reduced unpredictability. Now it creates exhaustion. You feel like you are always the one holding things together, and if you stop, everything will fall apart. That belief is not adult logic. It is childhood survival. When you were young, you may have sensed that stability depended on your behavior. If you were calmer, maybe things wouldn't explode. If you were better, maybe you wouldn't be criticized. If you were less needy, maybe you wouldn't be ignored. Those equations formed quietly. No one wrote them down. But you internalized them. Now, as an adult, you still operate from those invisible rules. Don't be too much. Don't ask for too much. Don't upset the balance. And when you do upset it, guilt arrives instantly. Guilt feels like danger. So you retract. You apologize. You smooth it over. And the child feels safer again. But the adult feels unseen. The more this cycle repeats, the more your external life looks mature. And your internal life feels fragile. You handle business, you handle crises, you handle responsibility. But a small relational shift can destabilize your entire emotional equilibrium. That discrepancy is not weakness. It is unintegrated vulnerability. The adult you built is competent. But competence is not the same as integration. Integration would mean the adult can feel fear without surrendering authority. Right now, fear still has authority. And until that changes, the child will continue stepping in, not maliciously, desperately, trying to secure the safety it once lacked. And every time it succeeds in keeping connection at the cost of your authenticity, the pattern strengthens. Now we move deeper. The adult you show the world is structured, disciplined, capable, self-aware. But structure can be a disguise. Sometimes the adult ego becomes a mask built to compensate for the child's fragility. You overachieve to feel secure, you overprepare to avoid criticism, you overanalyze to prevent rejection. From the outside, it looks like ambition. Inside, it is anxiety. You say you are driven. But sometimes you are driven by the fear of not being enough. You say you are independent. But sometimes you are avoiding the vulnerability of depending. You say you have high standards, but sometimes you are controlling variables so nothing unpredictable can hurt you. The ego becomes sophisticated, polished, competent. But underneath, the child is still scanning the room, still asking silently, "Am I safe here? Do I matter here? Will they stay?" Jung wrote that complexes behave like partial personalities. They interrupt the continuity of the ego, they seize it. You don't feel possessed, you feel urgent. Someone withdraws emotionally, you feel compelled to fix it. Someone seems disappointed, you feel compelled to prove yourself. Someone seems distant, you feel compelled to chase. The adult ego justifies it. It's communication, it's responsibility, it's maturity. But the emotional charge reveals the truth. You are not communicating. You are securing attachment. You are not being responsible. You are preventing abandonment. You are not being mature. You are negotiating safety. The ego disguises the regression. It tells you this is who you are, a giver, a fixer, a strong one. But strength built from fear has tension in it. You feel it when you are alone, when no one is watching, when the approval is silent. There is a restlessness, a subtle anxiety, a sense that something could disappear at any moment. That is not ambition, it is vigilance. And vigilance is exhausting. You can be admired and still feel unseen. You can be successful and still feel small. You can be respected and still panic when someone important shifts emotionally. Because the adult identity did not integrate the child. It covered it. Covering is not healing. Covering is containment. Containment works under control. But relationships are not controlled environments. They trigger unpredictability, and unpredictability awakens the original fear. So the child steps forward again, not because you are incapable, because you are divided. The ego performs stability, the child negotiates survival. And until those two are connected, the performance will continue. Polished, impressive, fragile underneath. You do not need to eliminate the child. You need to stop pretending the adult is fully in charge. Because right now, in the moments that matter most, when intimacy deepens, when conflict arises, when rejection threatens, it is not the adult making the decision. It is the child trying not to be alone again. And that child does not think long-term. It thinks urgently. It thinks in absolutes. It thinks in survival. If you want to understand why your adult life feels stable on the surface but unstable underneath, stay here, not for reassurance, for accuracy. Because what looks like sabotage is often regression, and regression is not weakness. It is unfinished development demanding attention. If you are willing to examine the mechanism instead of blaming yourself, continue. Most people prefer to say, "That's just my personality." But personality built around unprocessed fear is not identity. It is defense. And defense cannot build intimacy. It can only negotiate it. The real shift begins when you stop asking, "Why am I so sensitive?" and start asking, "When did I learn that connection could disappear?" That question changes the ground beneath your identity. And most people are not ready for that. Because if the fear is old, then the reaction is not proof of who you are. It is proof of what was never held. And that realization destabilizes everything you thought was solid. Now comes the part most people avoid: integration. Not the poetic version, the destabilizing one. If the wounded child has been reacting beneath your adult identity, then integrating that child will not feel empowering at first. It will feel disorienting. Because the strategies that once guaranteed connection will begin to loosen. You will say no and feel guilt rise immediately. You will stop over-explaining and feel exposed. You will resist chasing and feel panic. The panic will not mean you are wrong. It will mean the child inside you believes safety is being threatened. And here is where the environment reacts. When you stop over-accommodating, some people will call you distant. When you stop fixing everything, some will call you selfish. When you stop managing everyone's emotions, someone will accuse you of changing. You are changing. That is the point. The child once believed love required constant adjustment. The adult must learn that love can survive boundaries. But the first time you test that belief, your body will shake. Because the old rule is still active. If I assert myself, I will lose them. Integration means staying present through that fear. Not overriding it, not collapsing into it, staying with it. Letting the adult remain in the room while the child panics. That is new, and new feels unsafe. You will notice something subtle. When you don't rush to fix tension, the silence stretches. When you don't apologize immediately, discomfort lingers. When you don't seek reassurance, uncertainty grows. That uncertainty is not proof of abandonment. It is the absence of the old strategy. For years, the child reduced anxiety by managing connection. Now you are removing that management. Of course, anxiety rises. You are withdrawing a survival mechanism. Most people retreat here. They return to pleasing, to smoothing, to chasing. Because the temporary relief feels safer than the unfamiliar space. But relief is not growth. Relief is repetition. If you continue choosing relief, the child remains in control. If you tolerate the discomfort, the adult strengthens. Not dramatically, gradually. This is the emotional cost of integration. You will feel more exposed before you feel more stable. You will feel more uncertain before you feel more grounded. You will feel more alone before you feel more whole. Because the child equates boundaries with abandonment, and the adult must prove otherwise through experience, not through affirmations. Through lived moments where you say no, and the world does not collapse. Where you assert yourself, and connection remains. Where you allow someone to be upset, and you are not destroyed. Each of those moments rewrites something old. Not instantly, but incrementally. The child does not disappear, it learns. It learns that safety does not depend on self-erasure. It learns that connection does not require constant performance. It learns that disagreement is not exile. But that learning requires repetition, and repetition under discomfort. Jung insisted that individuation, becoming whole, requires integrating what was split off, not eliminating it, not transcending it, integrating it. The wounded child is not the enemy, it is unfinished. And until it is consciously included in your adult awareness, it will keep acting from the shadows. But when it is included, something shifts. The reaction slows, the urgency softens. The need to secure approval weakens. Not because you stopped caring, because you stopped negotiating from fear. That is when adulthood becomes real. Not when you pay bills, not when you use psychological language, When you can feel fear and still choose consciously. When the child inside you is no longer alone, because you finally showed up as the adult it never had. And that changes the structure of your life. The question is not whether you have an inner child. You do. The question is whether that child is still in charge or still alone. Look carefully at your reactions. Where do you feel urgency that exceeds the moment? Where do you feel panic at the idea of someone leaving? Where do you shrink to preserve connection? Write it down, not as confession, as observation. Because what you observe consciously stops governing unconsciously. And if the child no longer has to fight for protection, what kind of adult becomes possible?